my mom wasn't an emotional person. So whenever I would hand over money was like when I would get the biggest hug or like
Mm.
the pat on the back or like, an I love you or something. So it was easy for me to connect love and money.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, everybody. I'm Eden.
And I'm Jay.
And welcome to Eden XJ Unfiltered, the podcast where we have created a safe and sexy space to have unfiltered
We
conversations.
might be the same sex, but we have different opinions. Ooh,
Ooh,
sexy
I
boys.
know.
Serious topic, sexy boys.
Serious topic. What serious, sexy topic are we talking about today?
Let's talk about money,
Uh
baby.
huh, money. This is actually a question we've been getting a lot on our social
Yeah.
is about money, that brown dollar, that relationship with money, circulation of money,
How do I
saving
talk
money,
to my partner about money?
investing money, relationships, all the above. So we've kind of decided to set aside a specific money talk podcast to discuss all of those things. And before we get into that money talk topic, we do have to remind you all, go follow us on Instagram at EdenXJ and TikTok and YouTube and all the things, because on this podcast you can watch it on YouTube, which is so fun because you get to see all of these crazy wacky facial expressions that we have on top of
Mhm.
the podcast. But and if that's not your thing too, keep listening. We are the Uber for your ears. Give us 5 stars.
Yes, leave us 5 stars on our podcast. We greatly appreciate that.
Yes. But the reason why we're talking about money today is that I feel like as
And
we're
that's exactly why we're wearing black clothes.
I know it's a very dark,
It's a very dark
depressing
topic.
topic. No, we shouldn't be afraid to talk about money. And I think that's a stigma that we're trying to break
Mhm.
and being open to talking about money, and that talking about money can be fun, it can be relaxing, it can be sexy.
Mhm.
We'll tell you how to get it there. But tax season is approaching us come April. So we figured let's have this conversation now.
Mhm.
Because I know everybody's thinking about money.
Yeah.
We're already a couple months
So I have
into
a
the
question
year.
for you.
Yeah.
What was your first introduction to money? Like when you were a kid? Do you remember how that was introduced to you?
Um, my parents didn't really talk to me too much about money.
Mhm.
I think I was aware that we didn't have a lot of money or as much money as somebody else. When I would visit other friends' houses and saw the way that they lived and the things that they had, and then I started to realize that I didn't have we didn't have much. Uh, I there's something very distinctive, and I'll never forget it. It was a friend's house that I went to, and when a kid grows, and sometimes they mark the height on the wall,
Yeah.
and they're like, this year they were this tall, this year that they were that tall. They had that all the way up till their age. Then I think I was in junior high, and I realized I have no idea what that's like because I've moved 1 to 2 times every year,
Right.
and I've never stayed in a place that long, and I thought that was normal, and that that's what everybody did because that was my normal, and it's not normal. Like, stability is actually the normal or should be the normal, but I didn't have that. My mom worked, a job, and she did her best to provide what she could. I had, I think, 6 foster brothers and sisters, at the time, and, my mom was on food stamps, and, she was doing what she could, to keep us going and to keep us in a good school and a
Mhm.
good school district, but we didn't have much, and I remember seeing, eviction notices on the door so much that I was, like, desensitized to them. I would see a notice on the door and not even like blink an eye, I would just immediately grab a trash bag and start packing up my stuff because I knew that we had to leave and we were just moving again. And that was just normal for me.
Mm.
So I think my relationship with money was we didn't have much. I shouldn't ask for much. And that if I wanted anything in life, like if I wanted the things my friends had or my friends' families had, I needed to go to school and go to college and get out of this small town if I wanted more in life. And that was kind of my first relationship with money. What
Yeah.
about you?
Well, I think I had a similar situation. I grew up in like the hood in K Town, and my mom was a single parent of three daughters, and she had 2 to 3 jobs throughout my entire life. So even with 2 to 3 jobs and 3 kids, we grew up in a 1 bedroom apartment.
Mm.
I lived in a 1 bedroom apartment with my mom and my 2 sisters and my mom's boyfriends from the moment that I was born to my teen years when I moved out. So we didn't have a lot of money, but my mom had like this weird relationship with money where she would splurge on things a lot.
Mhm.
And I noticed like she had kind of like an expensive taste, but couldn't really afford it, if that makes sense. So there was a lot of like spending money on like shopping sprees and spending money on
Mm.
like certain things that we really didn't need.
Interesting. Yeah, that's that. My mom would do that too. Like we would have nice clothes, but
Yeah,
there would
but
never
then
be food in the
exactly.
fridge.
Yeah, or like everything's just, I mean, you can only imagine like a
Mhm.
1 bedroom apartment with 3 kids and
Yeah.
2 adults. Like it was really cramped and there was no, I don't know, we rarely had anything really. So I learned early on that I didn't have much. And I remember, I think my first realization that I was poor was when I was in middle school and I went to a friend's sleepover. Caitlin, she was like one of my best friends at the time, and I went to her house and she lived in like this baller apartment with her mom, and everything was lush and beautiful,
Oh,
and like her
wow.
mom had like this nice fancy car, and like I spent the weekend with her. My mom never let me sleep anywhere, so it was like a big
Big
deal
deal.
that she allowed me to do this one time, but her mom took us to the CD store. We bought like Aqua's new CD. We like went to like eat pizza and
How
we like did
cute.
all these things like bowling and just
Yeah.
her mom did not care. She just swiped all day long
Yeah.
and like did not care. And Caitlin had like this awesome room, all these things that she could play with. And
Her
that
own
was
room.
her own room. Yeah, didn't have to share it with anybody. It was like her own space. And I remember thinking, damn, like I want that. Like how can I get that? My own room.
I remember we had I think 12 people living in a 2 bedroom, 1 bathroom house at one
Mhm.
point. And like you have to imagine what it's like to share a bathroom with like 12 people.
Oh, that's wild.
Yeah, I still feel like I'm the fastest peer of all my friends because you have to be quick. But
Yeah,
these
I
are
can
like
imagine.
childhood traumas that I still deal with today. It's like I'm a record award fast peer, but that's because I had to survive.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I eat quickly because if there was nothing left by the time the second round for meals came, then you just didn't eat, and things like that. It was,
Yeah.
part of just survival. And that was my childhood dynamic growing up. But I think it's so fascinating that even though we have obviously different moms, the way I think poverty worked back then and the way
I
our
think it still works that
oh
way.
definitely, but like I think the way that our moms thought they can like fake the funk was that if we go to Disneyland and if
Yeah.
my kids are dressed nice and if forward presenting, it looks like everything's fine and that we're well off. Who cares what's behind the door?
Yeah, totally.
Who cares if there's nothing in the fridge? Who cares if we don't know what we're
And
having
that's
for
the
dinner?
thing. I remember like I went to Disneyland every year in my entire childhood, I went to Disneyland. I have pictures every single year.
Mm-hmm.
And that's expensive. Like
Yeah,
that must have cost an arm and a leg
it
at the
still
time.
is
But
expensive.
they would have preferred to spend it on that than to like,
Uh huh.
I don't know, save it
Yeah.
and try and get a better place.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, nor here nor there. But I think that was my first introduction to money, and
Mm-hmm.
like I said, my mom would spend a lot of money and there was rarely any savings. So growing
Mm-hmm.
up, I didn't really know what savings was. And that was like another topic, right? When you're like growing up and you're making money. In my household, when you get your first job, like you're supposed to pay rent.
Mm-hmm.
Like I grew up in that kind of house where I had to take over a bill or bills or like partial rent because it's just what you do when you turn 16 and you get your
Yeah.
first job. which I found out later on after meeting friends, like, that's not, like, normally what happens in other people's homes, you know? Like, there are friends who had parents who supported them and
Mhm.
taught them how to save and taught them how to do things early on.
I wanna touch on that a bit more because I feel like within our culture and within the family dynamic, money and family tend to blend and mix quite a
Yes.
bit because it's perceived that once you start working and once you start, trying to figure out how to, contribute back into society and get a job, that now you have to give back
Yeah.
to your parents and there's no cutoff. There's no limit. There's no end to this. And I think money and love get blended quite a bit within our culture. Like I need to in order to show you how much I love you, I need to give you money. Or at least that's how that relationship is, that transaction feels like it works that way. And I know we kind of talked a little bit about this with your dynamic with your mom. And I know you've been open about it on our social media and, talking about how love and money
Yeah.
and, that family dynamic was kind of blurred for a while. I was very, surprised and, pleasantly surprised because when you opened up about that, you opened the floodgates for a lot of other people from different cultures, not just Hispanic, to also say, like, they had that similar experience as you.
Yeah. No, I mean, like I said, I had to pay rent early on, and like my mom would just tax me, and my mom wasn't an emotional person. So whenever I would hand over money was like when I would get the biggest hug or like
Mm,
the pat on the back or like, an I love you or something. So it was easy for me to connect love and money because that's how I was raised. That's what I would get, right? I'd get like a pat on the back if I gave my mom money. So when I moved into relationships, it was kind of like this toxic trait that I had to unlearn. Or if I liked you, we were in a relationship, then I felt obligated to buy you things
mhm,
because that's how I was raised. So it wasn't until I think right before I met you that I was starting to really reflect on like my relationship with money and family.
mhm. Do you feel like your relationship with your family is only built off of money?
Yeah, I think it was for
Mhm,
sure. And I think that's part of the reason why we don't talk because I essentially cut them off and they
mhm,
view me as like, the family member that doesn't contribute or doesn't help out. Um, and I view them as toxic because they only want to talk to me if I give them a paycheck
mhm.
or, a handout. And yeah, it's kind of backwards and toxic.
I think how do we tell the difference in, supporting your family and, genuinely wanting to help out and then it being expected of you?
Mm.
I think those are two different dynamics. There's nothing wrong with helping your family if that's something that you truly want to do, but I think that has to be your choice.
Well, that's the thing. I think it's a choice, right? Like if
Mhm.
it's not an obligation
Yeah.
and it feels like a choice, then great. I don't think
Yeah.
that's toxic. But when your family's literally asking you for money and they won't like their emotions change based off of how much you
Mm,
give them,
yeah.
that's pretty toxic.
The way I feel like this is so wrong and so backwards for a lot of cultures is that parents feel like once their kid starts working and they start making money that they are entitled to that money. And it's
Yeah.
because I put food on the table for, 18 years and I provided for you and I took care of you and I did all those things. The child never asked to be born.
I mean, that's facts.
So that is your choice to have that child and your responsibility as a parent to take care of said child because again, choices. If that's not that choice wasn't for you, then don't go through that and abort mission. Like that is how that dynamic would work. But if you're choosing to have a child, then that child is its own person and not giving birth to what you're thinking is going to be a future paycheck or
Mm.
an income stream, once they get older, and that you're obligated, that you're, and sorry, not obligated, you're entitled to
Right.
that is so is just not a good way of thinking. And I don't feel like that's a healthy dynamic within a relationship because it's just built off of money and it's built off of finances. And how much you love a person shouldn't be how much are you giving me? How much money am I getting out of
Yeah.
you this month? And if it's a large amount, I'm going to give you like a bigger hug, or I'm going to play on your heartstrings. And then when I need more money again, I'm going to go cold and take that love away until you
Right.
give me more. And it's just such a very toxic dynamic because then not only are you blurred with your family dynamic, but then that trickles over into your relationships.
Right.
It trickles over into your friendships.
Yeah, that part.
And it can be a very dangerous and dicey cycle of how you view money and how you spend it and how
Mhm.
you save it. And it's kind of like people pleasing but with money. And it's a little bit dangerous in that
It
sense.
can
Like,
be, yeah,
let
and
me
I
make
think
you happy.
yeah, and I think it's like it kind of all plays together, right? Like I was in a string of toxic relationships,
Mhm.
and I spent a lot of money on all of those toxic relationships. So it was like not having an example of like what a healthy relationship
Mhm.
looks like, and then not having boundaries on like what makes sense when
Mhm.
it comes to finances and being in a relationship.
So, money and relationships, right? And
Yeah,
I don't want people to think like we had it perfect
that's
right from where
not
we
at
met.
all.
That is not true. And let me just tell you how untrue that statement is. And it's that gift giving is a part of our love languages. It's a
Yes.
part of both of our love languages. So that can be a little bit dicey sometimes too.
It was very dicey in the beginning.
In the beginning, just we still fell, head over heels and, for each other so quickly, and we just wanted to show each other that. And how else do we show each other with that? With like gifts and trips.
Mhm.
And you and I are very competitive.
Mhm.
So then we
By
just
nature.
kept trying to like one up each other with these date nights and these gifts. And it was to the point where I think we just kind of started putting our relationship online, and people would be like, "Ooh, look what Jay did. Oh, I wonder what Eden's gonna do. Okay, now Eden did this. What's Jay gonna do?" And then they kind of
Mm.
saw and got involved with the dynamic because we that gift giving is just what we do. And then we had to have a conversation, and it's not that fun conversation to initially have where you're like, "Okay, we were all gas, no brakes. If we're gonna make it out alive and like
And with
afford
money in the bank.
food next month, let's pump the brakes."
Yeah.
And there's it was interesting because I think I brought up the conversation, and then you were like, "Okay, thank God." Like, I
It's
don't
like
think
because
you
my
wanted
bank
to have
account cannot
it.
continue.
My bank account can't continue this. Like, what do? I break up with her rather than tell her like I can't afford this relationship? No, like we're adults, and I
Mhm.
think we were never taught to have these conversations about money. And the way I think I introduced it, or I proposed it by opening the conversation, it is, I love you so much and I love our dynamic, and I know gift giving is a part of our love language. But what I want to talk about is what is going to be our preparation for the
Mhm.
future.
Mhm.
Let's talk about budgeting because I don't want to take away, gift giving because that's just who we are.
Mhm.
Let's just put some boundaries. Let's put
Yeah.
some ground rules on
Right.
here, like can't go over this amount,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
one year we did no gifts and we had to get a little creative with that. And because we had a bigger financial goal, and let's work on this together as a partnership. And
Yeah.
it was really nice to hear that you were on board too and feeling the
Yeah, well,
same thing.
this was also like the first year in our relationship, so not even, I think it was like 6 months in or
Yeah,
something,
about
6 to 8
6 months.
months. And I
We
had
blew through a lot
never
of money in 6 months.
we
So,
did.
oh
We
my
did.
God.
It was insane. And I think that like I had never before you I had never really had like a financial conversation with my partner.
Oh,
And that was like an eye opener
yeah.
because I never felt safe enough to really be honest and open about finances
Hmm.
and long-term goals.
Hmm.
So it was nice to have that conversation early on to set like the foundation, right? Like we both love each other and we're gonna get each other gifts, but if we, have to budget, doesn't mean that we love each other less. Because
Yes.
again, I had this weird relationship with like love and money.
Mhm.
So that was something that we had to adjust, but it was
Yeah.
really cool. And then I remember you would do little things. Like
Mhm.
I'm a sucker for home goods. I am obsessed with home goods.
She got banned from Home Goods after, like after a couple trips where you came home with, like, random tchotchkes and stuff that we
I
didn't
came home with
need.
a chicken.
Yes, a chicken. You came home with a chicken, and I
Uh,
was like,
why?
"Okay."
But I love home goods, and I'm a sucker for like a good chair or like a desk or something that I do not need.
No,
And
it was a telescope that
yeah,
we didn't
telescope,
need
right?
and a canoe.
I
A
wanted the canoe.
a canoe that you wanted to hang above a dining table that we also didn't have, but Home
But
Goods had a
if I
dining
had the
table.
canoe, then I can get the dining table. But
Ye
anyways, that's not here nor there. But the point is, I had this addiction with home goods, and you were so cute, and you sat me down, and you're like, okay, like we're
Mhm.
gonna do home goods a little differently. So the next time we went to home goods, you were like, okay, you can fill the cart up as much as you want, like do your thing. But then once it's filled and we go to the checkout line, we have to go through all the items to see what you actually need versus what you want.
Mhm.
And even though I wasn't a fan of this exercise in the beginning, it did teach me a lot about,
Yeah.
impulse buying,
Yes.
which I do all the time. Or I did.
In
A lot
couples
better now.
therapy, I I was really listening to you when you were talking about how you're an emotional spender.
Yeah.
You spend when you're happy, you spend when you're sad. You're like, "Oh, I'm feeling down. I want to go buy something. I'm going to
Mhm.
go to the mall. I'm going to go to Home Goods."
Mhm.
We just had something exciting happen. Let's go to Home Goods. So, whether it's a good or a bad emotion, it's still emotional spending. And humans have a lot of emotions, which equals a lot of spending. And
And I'm a
so
Pisces, so add extra emotions.
and what we worked on in couples therapy and what I've understand with you is that emotions and talking about your emotions are really hard.
Mhm.
And so, however you express your emotion, even if it's different than me, because I like to talk about my emotions, you, kind of just experience them in a different way. And that's through shopping sometimes. And I don't want to take that away from you. I don't want to take away that emotion and that feeling. So let's go to Home Goods.
Mhm.
Let's get you that cart. And I want you to fill it because that's what you need right now. That's what you need in the moment. It's going to help you feel that emotion. And you get that cart and you push it aisle by aisle and you put in your little telescope, which is not very little, it's big. I think there's at one point we had two carts. You put in, this random lamp and this desk and this neon
Mhm.
sign and all of these different things. And you fill the cart and we're going aisle by aisle. And I'm just letting you do your thing. I'm not stopping you. I'm not saying no, letting you fill the cart. And then we get to the end.
Right.
When we get to the aisle,
Mhm.
and we start going through these things and we have these like honest conversations. It is safe space, and I'm pulling up this telescope and I'm like, do you want this or do you need it?
Mhm.
And then you have to really answer that question for yourself
Honestly.
honestly. And you're like, well, define need because we could really look at the stars and it could be a really cool date night and I can just see us and it can go great in the living room and and
Uh-huh.
it would be nice next to the boat and all of these different things. Correct? I see the vision. Do we need it? And you really start, I think, seeing your wheels turn
Mhm.
and you realize how much things you're putting into the cart to fill something that's
Mhm.
empty and none of these things are going to fill it. And then you start to realize, you know what? We actually just need a cutting board because we have no cutting boards anymore. And then sometimes, like, if it's within budget and it's within reason, like, if I'm very proud of you for going through all of these things, and there should be a reward system. If whatever's in the cart is successfully all that we need,
Mhm.
you can get one thing that you want. And it just so happened to be the chicken at that time. It was like some black chicken that you really wanted. It goes nowhere in the house, I think, aesthetically wise, but you really wanted it. And it made you happy.
Mhm.
And I think it was like $15. And if that's the cost of your happiness, then let's add it to the cart because you did a really good job. And it's not every time, but I definitely feel like you should have this balance and you should
Yeah.
feel these emotions. And filling the cart is definitely a tactic that we used for your
Yeah.
emotional spending.
Mean, that was a great financial tool that I think worked for us in the beginning and really like changed my mindset
Yeah.
to what need versus want.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a really important thing to learn when it comes to money in a relationship. What are some other financial tools that you think
Well,
helped us?
I really love that uh sorry, not even to just like segue off of that. I just wanted to commend you for just I think growing in this instance because now like I trust you to go to Home Goods and I don't need to be there. Like I don't need to wonder if she's gonna come back with
With a
with
bunch
a bunch of
with a
different things
telescope and a canoe.
that we don't need. And I think you've kind of grown and you've understood that and now you're also invested in our finances.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of segues into your question, like what are some other things that we've learned on our finance journey in our relationship that have really helped? And those are our finance dates.
Yeah.
Like we meet every other week to talk about our budget and our spending and what is our goal? Like what are our big ticket items that we have coming up? What are our plans for the future? And what are our business, models and business ventures that we want to
Hmm.
invest in and push forward because we definitely believe in not having just one streamline of income and having multiple different, streams of income because if the pandemic has taught us anything, do not put all your eggs in one basket. It's
Hmm.
very dangerous and it's very scary and we just want to learn from that time. And these dates keep us in check and they keep
Yeah.
us like on track. And I think we need to have them every other week because our life and our dynamic is so busy. We have to just constantly reel each other back in, and that's okay.
Yeah. And I think with the money dates, it was really scary at the beginning because I'd never had a money date with my partner.
Ew.
But I think that there was like cool things that make it easier to have money dates. And if
Mhm.
you're like trying to figure out how you can have the conversation of money with your partner, I think having an actual date night where
Mhm.
there's like snacks that you can snack on, maybe a bottle of wine, maybe some drinks, just kind of setting the mood so it's not this like scary monster in the corner that you
Yeah.
have to like attack, deal with your partner and just making it light
Yeah.
because it's already going to be like an uncomfortable, it's like a fully transparent
Yeah.
conversation about money, right?
Mhm.
And a lot of the times we feel some sort of guilt or like
Yeah.
a shame or something because it's almost like someone pulling the covers off of the bed, right? Because
And you're
every
naked.
and you're naked and you're like, ah, you got to see
I'm
everything.
exposed.
I spent too much money at
My bank
Starbucks,
account is
sorry.
exposed.
Yeah, exactly.
But now it's like once you do them so often, then you're like, "Okay, pull the covers off. It is what it is."
Yeah, exactly. Now it's
Like
just like, I'm good, I'm naked, let's go.
I'm good. Like, and we kind of hold ourselves accountable, and it's going to be tough. Whenever you're doing money talks, it is going to be tough
Mhm,
because now you're talking about, okay, this is where we're at, and it's okay to not be there and not be 100% perfect with it. Because I think what I think about it is like working out, right?
mhm,
Like the more you do it and the more practice you get, the
right.
more muscles you build and the fitter you are, kind of the same way as your bank account. But every so often, when you have a cheat day or when you fall off the wagon, it's okay. Just go back to the gym. Just get back out there, get back on your routine, and just keep moving forward versus just giving up altogether
Yeah,
because you didn't get it right the first try or it was hard. Well, yeah, it's gonna be hard. Pulling back on your spending and getting within budget
yeah,
isn't easy. You realize, how much do you actually eat out? You realize how expensive things are when you go to a restaurant. You realize how much things add up when you're buying coffee every
mhm,
single day. And all of those things you have to go and you think the same way as filling the cart, right? Do I want it or do I need it?
yeah,
And I think a lot of the things that you think that you need, you actually don't.
mhm,
And that is the biggest lesson we've learned with building a relationship, a healthy relationship with money and a partnership within each other and being transparent about it. We're very transparent about our money. We have different accounts because we have different goals, and
That's
it's
another good tool, though. I
yeah.
think halfway through a relationship, we realized if we had like 5 different checking accounts, and that might be excessive for a lot of you, but for us, it made sense, right? We need one checking account for our mortgage that we put in every
Mhm.
month, and we know that there will always be the full mortgage in that account.
Yeah.
There's another account that we use for our bills, just to throw money in there for our gas, electric, Wi-Fi, all that good stuff. So we know there's a certain amount that needs to be in that account.
And if there's ever a because you should know exactly how much is in that account, like, for those bills every month. If there's ever a time where it goes negative because you put that exact amount in, then you know you were billed for something that you shouldn't have been billed for, or something has changed, so it definitely keeps you on it, and it keeps you, like, hyper aware of your bills, and it keeps us in check and hyper aware of
Yeah.
our utility bills and keeping that separate, and then having an actual savings
Yeah.
account, and then having another separate account for our actual spending.
Yeah.
So the things that we need to for the household expenses, grocery expenses, and all of our like livable expenses, there should be an allotted budget in there as well.
Yeah.
And
And then we have got a goals
mhm,
account, which is just like these big trips that we take yearly.
mhm.
We're big travelers. We love to travel. Like we're about to leave, or yeah, we're about to go
Yeah.
to Australia and Bali. So that is like its own separate account.
Oh my gosh. I mean, our travel account is we have to work really hard for that one.
Hmm.
But it's important to us. Like
Yeah.
traveling and making memories, and people might see that as not the best way to spend your money, but that's just our thing that we love and that we, continue to keep investing in because I think we grow as people,
Hmm.
and we grow as a couple, and I think it's healthy for our dynamic to have these adventures because 'cause they're
Hmm.
important to us. And you should have a reward system that doing all this hard work is going to pay off, right?
Hmm.
You have something to look forward to, a light at the end of the tunnel, if you will, to keep you motivated, to stay on track, to keep doing the hard stuff, to, not go out and eat with my friends all the time, and to stay home and cook, and we've, we've really started to figure out different dynamics to help us save.
Yeah.
And one of the ones that we did is, we used to love going out to eat with our friends all the
Hmm.
time and going to dinners and all that stuff, but then we were like, "Okay, we don't wanna cut that out completely because we do love seeing our friends. Why don't we start cooking for them? Like, we're
Yeah.
already gonna
Hosting is a
cook
lot
dinner.
cheaper than going out to dinner.
It's a lot cheaper than going out for dinner." And then there are times where we don't, cook everything by ourselves. Like, we cook the main piece, and then our friends bring a side, a salad, a dessert,
Drinks.
drinks, and then it's just kind of this communal thing, and we didn't end up spending
Hmm.
very much at all, and we still get to hang out with our friends and getting kind of creative in those ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Spot on. I think all of those things help. One last tip. I think when it comes to debt, debt can be a little crushing
Mm.
sometimes.
Wah, wah,
So the way
wah.
that Eden and I, and we still do this now, we have a couple of credit cards that we're trying to bring down before the baby gets here that we're just working away at. But I think it's important to celebrate those wins, even if it's
Yeah.
just like a quarter of it is paid down or 50% of it is paid down. Whatever that milestone is can be celebrated. And there are different ways that you can do that. One can be buying like a really nice bottle of wine that you can pop like once you hit that goal, or you can plan a date night or something that you've been wanting to do with your partner as like a reward for
Paying
crushing
it
that
all off.
debt. And
Yeah.
I think that's really important too, to constantly celebrate the little wins. So then it doesn't feel like
Yeah.
this overbearing thing that you have to do together.
What we have is we have like a pay off plan by
Hmm.
like a specific date,
Yeah.
um for our last credit card, and we have it on a giant whiteboard like in our
Yeah.
bedroom, so we physically see it, and it has each number that it needs to be every month in order to reach that goal at the end of it and have it paid off by
Hmm.
this time. And when we see that number every single day and we get to like put that red line across it because we like hit that goal and we're getting lower and lower and lower, it's just, you see it every day, you're staying on track. I think making these things visible and not having them be, out of sight, out of mind, because I think that's how they start to consume you, right? Is that you're not thinking about it.
Yeah.
You're just letting them exist and making them a part of your life. Like, no, it doesn't need to be like taking reins and taking control over your debt and your credit card debt, your student loan debt, all the debts, and having them be visible and not be ashamed of it, and just being like, this is my goal, this is my track, like you would track anything back to fitness or working out. You're counting your calories. It's like you're holding yourself accountable for these things.
Yeah.
Debt and money should be the exact same way. It shouldn't be this shameful thing. Like, people are like, I think people have like debt and, I don't know, like STDs, like in the same category. Like, you just don't talk about them. People have it, but then you just don't talk about it.
It's true. It's
it's not
true.
it's not taboo. It's just a part of
Y'all,
life.
we have debt.
We do. I mean, but that was something that we
Yeah.
talked to people about when we bought the house, is that you accrue so many expenses that you were not planning for. It's not like, here's the final check, like take all the money out of my bank account and that is it. There is something that happens every month
Yeah.
that you have to fix, and it's always like $1,000 or more. It's like the baseline for this is $1,000 that needs to get fixed. The gas line goes out, the electricity needs to be fixed, this needs to be
Plumbing.
repaired. Oh my god, the roof is $10,000, and that's a deal. It's all of those things combined, which people don't talk about, and
Mm.
on top of it, we're doing IVF, and we've been very open and honest about it, and it was more expensive than we anticipated it to be, and the only way that we could make this happen, even though we weren't excited about it, was adding some things onto credit cards.
Yeah.
And this was the debt, and this was the financial decision that we, chose and that we made for ourselves because this was important to us. And, we burned through the cash reserve that we had for our IVF, and our backup option was the credit card. And we're just still, paying away at it, and, we're gonna get it paid off. We have our goal, but that was a real outcome of not trying, doing IVF.
Yeah.
And, but these are honest conversations we had. We were like, what is the max? Like, where is our financial breaking point
Mhm.
where, we can still get above this versus being underneath it for the next like 3 or 4
Yeah.
years? And we have that number. We didn't reach it, thank goodness, because Baby Cakes over here had great eggs and great embryos on the second try, so we didn't need to do it a third time, but it was expensive.
Yeah.
But it's worth it. Babies are expensive and they're not even here.
So if you're listening to this and you haven't had the money talk with your partner, I hope you can use these tools to really start the conversation and
Mhm.
not let money control you and
Yeah.
do it have it the other way around.
I think there's just like one last question. I get asked quite a bit. I shared that story about how I was able to double my salary in like 3 months.
Mhm.
And it was because when I met you, she has expensive taste. And I was not making that much money. I was making, I think, like less than 60,000 a year at the job I was at, and I was working at a major motion picture company. But again, some of these bigger companies, they have a big name, and so they use it to their advantage,
Right.
and they pay practically nothing. And I didn't need much. I was like by myself, living by myself. I was okay with my saving a little bit here and there, and then just living day by day. And it wasn't until I met you really that I was like, okay, I'm gonna marry this girl. I want to have kids with her. I want to do all these things. I want to travel. I have a really decent savings account, but I definitely need more. And I want to make more because I want to be a provider. And it was kind of that like light and like motivation that I needed to really push myself. And I started to see skill sets as add-ons and as charges, right? So I was thinking like, if I learn this skill set like analytics and SEO, I can add this much onto my salary,
Mhm.
like realistically, once I learn that skill and add it to my resume. And so I started to teach myself and learn different skills. I learned about SEO, I learned about analytics, I do digital marketing in social media, and I started to train myself in these different skills, learning about websites and design and everything and editing. And I got all those skills. I put a price on every single one, and then I added it to my base knowledge of what I already do. And then I just knew what my base pay should have been. So it's about like around the 100,000 figure. And when I was leaving that job and I added all these skills to my resume and learned all these things, I started to look for these jobs and I asked for this amount and I was making 60,000. I got a job that paid six figures and that was, within 3 months, and it was because I learned these different skills that were worth this much, and I knew what to ask for when I accepted this role.
Mm.
So a lot of these digital marketing roles and roles in general, doesn't even have to be digital marketing, they'll ask you to do multiple jobs, right? You're a producer and an editor and a social media strategist and a planner, and you're all of these things, right? But they wanna pay you for one title. Make sure you're asking for what it's worth to do all of these different jobs and all of these different hats. And I made sure that if I had these different skills, then I was going to ask for these things. And then when I left that job and I went for another, job that I made even more money than I think I was making around like 120 at the time. I added a couple skills to my belt as well, and I just added those charges onto my resume about
Mm.
how much my skill set and my time and my knowledge was worth. And you just keep going and growing and adding skills and adding those charges and knowing your worth and looking for jobs to obviously see that value. And you just keep moving and you keep growing. Grow your skills, grow your job, grow your bank account. There it is.
There we go.
Sorry, that was like a long-winded way to say like you just learn your skills and know
Yeah.
your worth
Yeah.
and add tax.
There you go.
So I hope that helped. I get that question a lot. They're like, "Whoa, you made 60K and then you made 120K in a very short amount of time." Well, I just finally started charging the correct amount for what my skills were worth.
Mhm.
And there's nothing wrong with taking ownership of that and knowing your worth. I think we forget, we let other people define how much we should make and how much they think we're worth versus knowing what that number is ourselves and asking for that and proving it time and time again with how successful your work is and your resume is. And then just keep moving on. If a job doesn't feel right, they have no problem with dropping you. You should feel the same way.
I think that's like its own podcast talking about work and
Work
money
and
is
toxic work environments.
yeah.
Work and money. But this is just our way and our balance, but it all kind of started with you, right? It's like having a motivation and you know, you want to be able to have something to work towards. And I wanted to work towards having a family and a relationship and a dynamic where I can be a provider not only for myself but for my partner as well. And that was my motivation, and it keeps me motivated every day. And my new motivation after the pandemic was to not have all my eggs in one basket.
Mhm.
And so
That's
that's
really
why
important.
I wake up every day, even when I'm tired, even when we've only slept for 4 hours, but the grind still continues. Because now my new motivation is to have a family where I'm home more and I'm not
Yeah.
working all the time, and I want to miss out on everything. So that's my goal to get there.
Aw. Where's my all button?
We're getting so good at this.
I love
Oh,
it.
I love you.
Well, that was a great
That was a good money
conversation.
date. I feel like this
Yeah,
was like a pre-money date for our money
it
date this
is.
week.
And I hope y'all learned something today. And I hope you take this to your partners and we all have open, transparent conversations about money because it's very much needed.
And thank you again for listening to our podcast, Eat Next Day Unfiltered. If you like what you're hearing, give us 5 stars,
Please.
please. And then follow us on social media.
Yeah, follow us on social media, follow Precious and I, follow Eden XJ. And yeah, thank you
Thank
for
you.
listening.
Thank you for listening and thank you for supporting all of our adventures. We will
See
see
you
you
next
next
week.
week. Bye.
Bye.